Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in on what is a tragic day today for the aviation industry and the world. It was 6 hours ago as I'm writing this that a China Eastern Boeing 737 reportedly crashed into a wooded, hilly area in the Guangxi province of China. I've gone through an extremely abbreviated process to make this video, and from the very start I'll point out that I'm not going to be speculating on the cause or the reason that this accident occurred. The only information we have at the moment is from news outlets and social media, far from an official investigation agency. And frankly, anyone who you see claiming to know the cause at this stage should simply be treated as an untrustworthy source. Anyway, before we start, I'd like to make it clear just how devastating this accident would be for those involved and their families. It truly is a tragedy to have such a significant loss of life. So my thoughts are with the victims and of course their loved ones. The first I saw of this accident, as I'm sure many of you have, was the Flight Radar 24 log of China Eastern Flight 5735. It shows the aircraft was performing perfectly normally during the climb out and the cruise, travelling along Airway 599 en route from Kunming to Guangzhou, and as we approach the end of the log, we can see it's maintaining a speed of 457 knots at 29,000 feet, perfectly normal for a Boeing 737. I'll point out here that Flight Radar measures the ground speed of the plane, not the airspeed. So if there were any errors to do with the equipment on the plane, it wouldn't be showing up in this data. Nevertheless, it all appears perfectly normal until the altitude begins dropping dramatically. Within 2.5 minutes, it goes from what appears to be perfectly normal level flight at flight level 291 to descending through 3,000 feet, and that's the last data point we have. Now this data from the Flight Radar 24 website, which is in the description by the way, as all my sources will be, takes inputs from the ADS-B tracking data. It's not the same as secondary radar which air traffic control typically uses, so just be aware that this may not represent the full picture. You can see there are quite large gaps between data points for the whole flight, and this continues for the descent, where we don't get any data until the aircraft is already through 10,000 feet. CCTV video and dashcam footage does appear to confirm that the plane was in a terrifyingly steep dive as it hit the ground, and you can also note here that the aircraft does appear to be somewhat intact. Some pieces may have separated during the descent, but at this stage it doesn't appear as though an in-flight breakup occurred. Further videos doing the rounds on the internet show the smoke and fire coming from the wreckage site. 123 passengers and 9 crew were on board. And it's not confirmed yet, but it's hard to imagine that there will be any survivors after such a dramatic impact. The aircraft involved is a 6-year-old Boeing 737-800. It is not a 737 MAX. Everything appears normal looking at its history. It flew approximately 9,000 cycles with 18,500 hours of flight time. China Eastern operates over 100 737s, and is known to be one of the safest airlines in the world. In fact, aviation in China is overwhelmingly safe. The last time a fatal accident occurred in the country was over 10 years ago. Now many of you who are in the aviation industry will know that the fundamental 3 things you prioritize when flying is aviating, navigating, and communicating, in that order. So I think it'll be helpful to look at what we know about these 3 things at this early stage. In terms of aviating, the plane was in the cruise, but according to its flight the previous day, would have been close to its top of descent point. This means that if the flight was proceeding normally, the pilots would have been alert, briefed, and ready for the approach into Guangzhou. We don't know if they were also dealing with some sort of problem, but just something to be aware of when looking at the big picture. Another thing which may have been playing a role is the weather. Windy data from around the time of the accident shows at least some cloud and lightning developing around the Wuzhou area, indicating that there may have been thunderstorms and the aircraft may have been in cloud, but obviously none of this is known for sure. Moving on to navigating, the flight was proceeding along its normal route. If there was some weather, the pilots weren't deviating around it. And in terms of communications, the pilots would have been in contact with en route control for their corresponding airspace. There are no reports of radio calls indicating any problems, but again, we're at an extremely early stage. As I'm writing this, what the immediate future holds is search and rescue. China's President Xi Jinping has rightly called for an all-out effort to be made in the rescue operation. While it does appear unlikely that there will be any survivors, it certainly can't be ruled out until a thorough search has been conducted. The priority for accident investigation officials will firstly be orientating themselves with the main wreckage of the 737. An important step will be locating all four corners, if you like, of the plane. This will provide some clues as to if the pilots had control in the flight's final stages, what attitude the aircraft was in, and what sort of speed it was doing. And finally, what will be all important are the black boxes. It certainly looked like a tremendous impact force they would have experienced, but if they did survive, they'll provide the key data that investigators will need to piece together what happened on China Eastern 5735. While we have been analysing some of the preliminary data, I just want to say again that the tragedy of what has happened is indeed immeasurable. My thoughts are with the 132 people on board, as well as their families.